The biggest breakthroughs happen in silence, not when you're explaining yourself, chasing others, or seeking validation. There's a sacred power in silence that most people never tap into. We're conditioned to talk, to justify, to ask for permission. But Neville Goddard understood something very few people ever realize, that the world outside of you is nothing more than a mirror of what's happening within you. When that inner world becomes still, when it becomes focused and free from contradiction, reality begins to bend in ways that seem almost unreal. In today's video, you're going to discover one of the most misunderstood yet profoundly transformative principles Neville ever spoke about: the art of silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the deliberate withdrawal from explaining, chasing, and seeking approval. The kind of silence that clears the path for your vision to take root. Neville didn't shout his way into transformation. He didn't convince others. He assumed. He walked in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let the world reorganize around that inner state. And a critical part of that process was staying silent, cutting off distractions, avoiding emotional entanglement, and protecting his mind like sacred ground. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's not about pride or arrogance. It's about spiritual precision, mental clarity, inner discipline. When you're constantly reacting to others, defending your path, or obsessing over how things will unfold, you dilute your power. But when you go silent, when you become still inside, when you stop explaining and start assuming, everything changes. Neville once said, "Disregard appearances, conditions, in fact. All evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you already are what you want to be. That resting is silence. That assumption is stillness. And that is the beginning of creation." What if your manifestation isn't being blocked by lack of action, but by too much noise? What if every time you reach out, every time you explain your dream to someone who doesn't believe, every time you seek feedback, you're weakening the very foundation you're trying to build? Neville taught that imagination creates reality, but imagination must be undisturbed. It must not be influenced by doubt, fear, or contradiction. And that's why silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It is the environment where assumption matures. It's the greenhouse where new identity is cultivated, protected from storms and external interference. In this video, we'll go deep into why Neville Goddard emphasized inner quiet, emotional detachment, and solitude, especially during the process of manifesting a new self-image. You'll learn how inner speech controls outer reality, how cutting off from conflicting influences accelerates your transformation, and why people who succeed in Mittercent often move in silence, letting their results speak instead of their words. You'll discover the psychological mechanics behind this principle, how your subconscious responds more to repeated identity than loud effort, how the mind, when bombarded by doubt and external contradiction, defaults back to the old self, and how those who detach, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, are the ones who truly shift into their next level. You'll hear examples of how this played out in Neville's own life, how he mastered the discipline of holding the assumption, not discussing it, not checking in on it, not asking others what they think, just holding it persistently, quietly, until it hardened into fact. We'll talk about why silence is not just a concept, but a daily practice. It's in your morning routine, your inner dialogue, your reactions to other people. Every moment becomes a chance to choose stillness over explanation, presence over proof, vision over noise. And by the end of this video, you'll have the practical insight to apply this. You'll know how to go quiet without going numb, how to cut unnecessary contact, not out of anger, but to protect your becoming, how to assume instead of ask, to embody instead of explain. Because the truth is, you don't owe the world an explanation for your vision. Your results will speak louder than words ever could. And when you finally let go of the need to be seen, to be validated, to be understood, that's when the shift begins. So stay with us. Watch this video till the end. You'll walk away with a deeper understanding of one of Neville's most powerful yet overlooked teachings, and how to apply it with strength, peace, and wisdom. Welcome to Ignis Mindset, where we bring you the most powerful teachings rooted in deep inner mastery, self-discipline, and real transformation. If you're ready to reclaim your power in silence and move with quiet confidence, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's alignment. And alignment creates everything. Before we talk about the outcomes you're chasing, the goals you're visualizing, or the reality you want to bring forth, we must speak of silence, not just the absence of noise, but the kind of silence that centers the mind, sharpens inner vision, and separates what is essential from what is simply distraction. Neville Goddard's teachings always pointed back to one foundational truth. Reality is shaped from within, not from effort, not from speech, not from trying to convince others. The world outside is a reflection of the world inside. The movement of thought is more powerful than the movement of the tongue. Change your conception of yourself, Neville said, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. That sentence holds more weight than entire volumes of personal development advice. What you think about yourself, what you feel to be true of yourself, what you assume to be natural for yourself, that's what shapes your world. Not your explanations, not your arguments, not your endless clarifications to people who never really see your potential. The self you embody inside writes the script of your life outside. Yet what do most people do when they want to change? They talk, they explain, they overcommunicate their desires and dreams to others, not realizing that every spoken word is energy, and energy, when scattered, loses intensity. Talking too much dissipates inner focus. When you speak your desire to the wrong people, you invite contradiction, you invite fear, you invite questioning, and every time you allow someone else's disbelief into your mind, you compromise the solidity of your vision. Neville's power didn't come from his ability to persuade people. It came from his ability to persist in the assumption quietly, with full conviction. When you stop talking about what you're going to do and instead move as if it's already done, you become untouchable. That's the real power of silence. But silence also has another side, the courage to cut off what doesn't belong in your mental space. Before we talk about strategy or manifestation techniques, understand this. Cutting contact isn't an act of resentment. It's an act of clarity. When Neville taught detachment, he wasn't encouraging isolation or cold-heartedness. He was pointing to something higher, the necessity of creating an environment that nurtures belief, not one that constantly undermines it. You can't rise while staying entangled with people or patterns that keep you tethered to the old version of yourself. Some relationships, habits, and conversations only serve one purpose: to remind you of who you used to be. And that reminder, if fed consistently, pulls you back into an identity you've already outgrown. Cutting contact doesn't mean you stop loving. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop compromising your vision to stay connected to people who aren't meant to walk with you at this level. It means you stop explaining your growth to people who only see your past. It means you protect your assumption, not because you fear contradiction, but because you know how delicate belief can be in its early stages. When you're trying to embody a new identity, when you're assuming success, wealth, peace, confidence, anything that pulls you into the opposite must be handled with discipline. Sometimes that means silence. Other times it means space. Detachment is not a punishment for others. It's a gift to yourself. You wouldn't plant a seed and then dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You wouldn't place it in toxic soil and expect it to thrive. Your mind is the soil. Your assumptions are the seed, and the people you allow access to your thoughts. They're either watering your growth or poisoning your roots. Neville taught that once you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you must persist in that state, regardless of outer evidence. That kind of persistence demands inner quiet. It demands selectivity in conversation. It demands a clean break from distractions that speak a different language than your assumption. There are moments in life when you must step back, not to isolate, but to elevate. You stop explaining your transformation and simply live it. You let the silence build the bridge between where you are and where you're going. The world catches up in time, but only if you stay anchored in the state. Most people sabotage themselves by staying too emotionally entangled with old patterns. They want the new life, but keep engaging in the same dialogues. They want new levels, but keep seeking validation from those stuck at old ones. And Neville's message was simple: stop waiting for the world to understand you. Start embodying who you know you are. Cut off the noise. Walk in silence. Let results be the only reply. This isn't easy. Your mind will want to explain. Your ego will want to prove. But every time you choose stillness instead of reaction, focus instead of explanation, assumption instead of debate, you reclaim your power. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness in disguise. When you go silent, you don't become invisible. You become invincible. Your energy collects. Your belief deepens. And reality, as Neville taught again and again, begins to shift in direct response to the state you maintain, not the words you say. So protect that state. Step away if you must. Let go of what pulls you back. And most of all, stop seeking permission to evolve. The assumption held in quiet conviction is enough. Stop explaining your journey. That's one of the most overlooked instructions embedded in Neville Goddard's work. Manifestation is deeply personal. It's quiet internal work. It's not for public approval or debate. And when you start explaining your inner process too soon, you dilute it. You turn something sacred into something fragile because you open it to outside opinion, and opinion has a way of weakening conviction. Neville didn't teach people to go around announcing their assumptions. He didn't say, tell the world who you're becoming. He said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Quietly, firmly, without needing validation. Every time you explain your dream to someone who doesn't understand the laws you live by, you're not just sharing, you're subconsciously asking for permission. You're seeking reassurance. And the very act of seeking reassurance exposes doubt. Manifestation doesn't need approval, it needs stillness, inner certainty. Your assumptions are sacred blueprints. And blueprints are not for public inspection, especially when the structure is still being built. Most people make the mistake of announcing their desire, their goals, their transformation too soon, and what they receive in return is disbelief, caution, or worse, judgment. That energy attaches itself to your vision and begins to cloud it. Suddenly, you're not just living in the end, you're managing the weight of other people's skepticism. Neville taught that faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. That kind of loyalty demands discretion. You stay loyal in your assumptions, not by talking about them, but by being them. Not explaining your growth, but showing it. Living from the end is a silent, powerful stance. There's no begging, no convincing, just being. And this brings us to something even deeper: your inner conversations. Neville said, all that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. That sentence alone unlocks the entire framework. Your outer world is a reflection of the conversations you hold inside yourself. But what do most people do? They focus on external dialogue. They try to convince others of their worth, explain their choices, defend their beliefs, justify their desires. Meanwhile, their inner conversations remain the same. They still doubt, they still complain, they still replay failure, scarcity, and fear in their mind silently. Yet it is those silent scripts that construct reality. Neville never said change your world by talking to people. He said change your assumptions. Talk to yourself inwardly as the person who already has what they want. What you say to others means nothing if your inner voice contradicts it. Your imagination is the workshop. Your inner speech is the builder. When you walk through the day, rehearsing who you are, not who you were, your reality has no choice but to reflect that. So many people don't realize they are affirming their limitations, not through their affirmations, but through their casual inner speech. I'm not ready. This is hard. They won't understand. Every thought is a seed. Every inner dialogue is a direction. Neville wasn't interested in people becoming good speakers. He was interested in them becoming disciplined thinkers. And the only way to discipline your thinking is to guard your inner conversations more than your outer ones. Stop arguing with others. Start reprogramming within. That's where the shift happens. And when that shift begins, when you feel yourself detaching from the old and moving into a new assumption, there comes a time when you must walk alone. Not forever, just long enough for the new self to settle, just long enough to protect the soil of your mind from old weeds. This isn't loneliness, it's sacred solitude. Neville's path to manifestation wasn't about constant interaction, it was about inner cultivation. There's a reason why your biggest transformations often feel invisible at first. You're shifting energy, you're rewriting identity, and in that transition, silence becomes strategy. The people around you might not understand the stillness, but you do. You're not cutting them off out of resentment. You're creating space for the new self to become stable. The old identity, the one built on worry, doubt, and reaction, is sensitive to noise. The new identity, the one built on assumption, faith, and inner peace, grows in silence. Think of a caterpillar in its cocoon. No noise, no announcements, just quiet, hidden transformation. That's the metaphor Neville's work evokes, the unseen change that precedes the visible shift. To walk alone is to walk with your new assumption undisturbed. Most people sabotage their process because they're too quick to re-engage with the old world while the new one is still forming. They re-enter old conversations, old habits, old patterns, and then wonder why the change didn't hold. It's not because the law didn't work. It's because they didn't protect the process. You must become the version of yourself that already has the result and hold that version in place long enough for the outer to catch up. That takes silence. That takes space. That takes a willingness to not be understood for a little while. But in the stillness, everything aligns. Neville didn't walk through life trying to convince others. He lived from the end. He walked as if the unseen was already seen. And because of that unwavering posture, his world shifted. So stop explaining your growth. Redirect your energy inward. Strengthen the voice within. Let the new self become so stable that when you do re-enter the world, it reflects you, not the other way around. Focused identity is not born out of chaos. It is sculpted through deliberate silence and protected attention. Neville Goddard taught that what you assume to be true about yourself must be held with clarity and repetition. Not once, not twice, but over and over until it feels like the only truth. That kind of assumption takes energy, and that energy must be guarded. When you're constantly comparing yourself to others, arguing over opinions, or explaining your vision to people who cannot see it, you're leaking the very power meant to create. Every moment spent defending your dream is a moment stolen from becoming it. Neville understood this. He understood that your inner garden, your state of consciousness, must be tended like sacred soil. And anything that distracts you from that, anything that brings contradiction, must be lovingly but firmly removed. Cutting contact isn't always a dramatic gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as not responding, as not engaging in familiar loops, as quietly stepping out of rooms where your future doesn't exist. You're not doing this out of ego. You're doing it because your mental environment shapes your entire world. One negative conversation can shake your assumption. One lingering connection can reawaken an old identity. You cannot afford to let weeds grow where you're planting new beliefs. Neville never told people to isolate from hate. He taught them to focus from love. Love for their vision, love for their future, love for the person they are becoming. That kind of love demands boundaries, and those boundaries protect energy. You do not owe your presence to every person you've known. You do not owe explanations. You do not owe emotional labor. And most importantly, you do not owe access to anyone who makes your new identity feel distant. The transformation you're undergoing is delicate. It's sacred. Guilt and obligation are not part of this equation. Many people stay in unhealthy dynamics because they fear judgment. What will they say if I pull back? But Neville's work invites a different question. What will happen if I don't? Your old world will always try to pull you back, not because it's evil, but because it's familiar. Familiarity wants company, but growth demands solitude. The truth is, your future is more important than anyone's temporary comfort. Let that land. You owe your future more than you owe anyone's misunderstanding. The path to assumption is not paved with approval, it's walked in personal responsibility. Neville never chased people. He never sought permission. He didn't need to. He aligned inwardly. He trusted the law. And that law doesn't respond to begging, to external struggle, to loud proclamations. It responds to conviction, quiet, steady conviction. The law works in silence, always. Your subconscious mind doesn't care how passionate your argument is or how loud your voice gets when you're trying to convince others. It only responds to the belief you hold in stillness, the assumption that becomes familiar, the self-concept you feel in your bones, even when the world tells a different story. Manifestation doesn't happen when you're fighting for your vision. It happens when your vision becomes natural, when it becomes so real inside you that the outer world simply adjusts. That adjustment never comes through noise. It comes through silent agreement between your conscious and subconscious minds. When that agreement is reached, your outer world begins to rearrange, slowly at first, then all at once. And suddenly, the people who questioned you, who doubted your silence, your boundaries, your withdrawal, will witness the result, and the result will speak louder than any defense ever could. You won't have to justify. You won't have to prove. Your life will become the proof. Neville called this living in the end, embodying the feeling of the wish fulfilled so fully that it becomes your reality. The moment you no longer need to talk about it is the moment you're closest to receiving it. Detach and become, that is the method. That is the secret. That is the power. To hold that power, you must build daily discipline. The kind of discipline that honors silence, protects energy, and guards inner space like treasure. Start your mornings in stillness. Don't rush to your phone. Don't consume the opinions of others. Just feel. Feel the version of you that already is what you desire to be. Neville said feeling is the secret, and the morning is the best time to enter that state, because your mind is receptive and undistracted. In that quiet, you plant your identity. As you go through your day, resist the pull of reactivity. Not everything needs a response. Not every situation needs your energy. People may challenge you, question you, even provoke you. Let them stay unmoved. Protect your mental state like sacred ground, because it is. The real work is not out there. It's not in confrontation. It's in remaining loyal to your inner vision, especially when the outer contradicts it. That's where transformation happens. Not in loud effort, but in silent alignment. And when night falls, return to your imagination. The state akin to sleep. Sats was Neville's most trusted technique. That moment between wakefulness and sleep is when your conscious mind is relaxed and your subconscious is most open. Use that time wisely. Don't scroll. Don't overthink. Visualize. Assume, feel the scene of your fulfilled desire, not with desperation, but with certainty. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. Let it be done. No validation is needed. No explanation is required. The law is faithful. Your results will come, not because you forced them, but because you prepared the soil. planted the seed, watered it in silence, and protected it from weeds. That is how manifestation works. That is how your world changes. Try it for just 1 week. Sacred silence. No proving, no explaining. Just be. Step back from the noise. Watch what happens when you hold your vision quietly. Protect your energy, and allow your new identity to settle without interruption. This isn't about cutting people off in anger. It's about choosing alignment over distraction. If you're ready to take that step, comment below, I choose silence. We'd love to hear how this practice feels for you. If this message resonated with you, like this video, it helps more people find their way back to their own inner power. And make sure to subscribe to Ignis Mindset for more teachings that guide deep inner mastery, lasting personal growth, and powerful transformation, all through Neville Goddard's timeless lens. Remember, silence isn't emptiness, it's alignment. And alignment creates everything.